Hello, and thanks for joining us today for this IT Pro TV webinar. We will be live tweeting during the webinar at #ProsKnow. Have a question? Use the GoToWebinar question box throughout the webinar, and we will answer as many as we can at the end. You will receive a link to a recording of the webinar delivered to your inbox. Questions not answered during the webinar will be answered on Twitter with the #ProsKnow. Now let's get started.
All right, greetings everyone, and welcome to the IT Pro TV webinar series. We are so glad to have you today because we got a great webinar waiting for you. Ransomware, so much fun. Before we get into that though, we just want to thank you for hanging in there with us. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty. These things happen. We pivot, we move. We are an agile company. We're going to bring you this webinar, come hook or by crook, right? That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, we were all set up in the studio, ready to go, and our webinar platform just was not accepting our connection. So they're working on that. We just decided to jump over to into my office, and we'll record it anyway and get it over to you one way or another.
That's exactly right. That being said, again, thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Daniel Lowry. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I have been in IT for a little while now, 20 plus years, working on that. Formerly a systems administrator. I've worked in network administration as well. And now I've started diving into security more and more with the last few years of my career. I have vendor certifications from CompTIA, Microsoft, Linux Plus, CISA Plus, CEH, Pentest Plus. So I start seeing that deviation from my career into the security realm. I'm also an IT Pro TV edutainer. That's what I do here for our lovely company that we enjoy working at. And basically, I'm one of the faces you'll see if you are a member of IT Pro TV and delivering content to you or your people. That being said, let's move on over to my cohort here, which is the Don Pezets. I like to acknowledge him as the Don Pezet, right? He has also 20 plus years in IT, vendor certified from Microsoft, Google, CompTIA, Cisco. Really, the list is endless, ladies and gentlemen. He's got a lot of certs behind his name, a lot of years in this business. Also an entertainer here at IT Pro TV and our co-founder. So I'm going to play nice with him today so he doesn't look at me sternly and tell me, get a banker's box. All right, so let's move on with what is IT Pro TV? Maybe you're asking yourself that question. It is IT training for every stage of your career. That's right, from soup to nuts, whether you are just beginning, you want to get into IT as a career, and you're taking your first baby steps into that pool, or you're a seasoned vet, you've been around the block a few times, but you got to keep those skills sharp, right? IT Pro TV can help you out in any of those realms. We have, again, vendor stuff, right? CompTIA, Cisco, Microsoft, Apple, security and cloud technologies. We cover the whole gamut of different types of technologies and vendors that you might run into in the IT sphere. So if you're looking for that type of training, we have got you covered, right? It's an interactive two-host format to help keep you engaged. It's kind of what you're seeing right here, where you have a host, someone that's moving the content along with that SME who is a subject matter expert. It's going to deliver the greatest kind of content delivery you could hope for. We know this stuff backwards and forwards. We do a really hard job of bringing you the best video training you could ever hope to have. Virtual labs are also available, and exams included with that, practice exams, so that you can test your skills, making sure that you are learning and moving along at the right pace, so that when it's time to sit those exams, the real exams, you're going to be as successful as we can help you be. We also provide teams and individual plans. So if you're just a single person out there, career changing maybe, or you just need those technical skills, we can hook you up. If you're just a consumer, if you're also inside of a business, you have a team of people, you need to be able to give them, assign them to, work or videos to watch, things, and you can watch over that. We have you covered as well. So teams or individuals, ready to go. All right, Don. Let's start talking a little more about this webinar. Ransomware. Is your company doing enough?
Yeah, ransomware is a big topic right now, huge buzzword. A lot of organizations, a lot of government agencies, cities, schools, hospitals, all getting hit by it. And it's got a ton of CIOs asking that big question, am I doing enough? Right? Or not necessarily me. Yeah. Is my team doing enough? Is my company doing everything it could be to be prepared to survive, so you don't end up as one of those newspaper articles that says such and such company paid $500,000 in ransom, or such and such company has been down for 18 days while they try and recover, or such and such CEO has been let go.
That hurts.
Yeah, nobody wants to be that person. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the things your organization should be doing to be prepared for a ransomware hit. And I want to tackle it from the angle of things we can do to get ready to prevent ransomware, but also things we can do to react and make sure we can recover from ransomware. So that's all kind of on the plate here. Now, before we get too far into all of this, let's start off with something that's a little bit simple here, which is just, what is ransomware? And if you're watching this webinar, the odds are you already know what ransomware is, but basically it works something like this. It is a virus that gets installed in your machine and then pops up a message somewhat like what you're seeing here on the screen right now. In fact, this is a screenshot of the Jigsaw ransomware. And what it does is it encrypts the contents of your disk. And some of the more sophisticated ones will actually prevent you from using your system while it is encrypted. Other ones will let you keep using the system, but you don't have access to your files. They've all been encrypted, so you've lost your data. Now, this one's particularly nasty because once an hour, it deletes a file. It's a random file.
Well, that's a little gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah, nice and friendly on that one.
Encrypted, but things are disappearing.
And this software, these types of attacks are pretty sophisticated, but they don't have to. Like, anybody can go and download some of these ransomware rootkit, or not even rootkits, because unlike regular viruses, ransomware doesn't even have to run in administrative privilege mode. It can just run as a regular user, because what is it doing? It's encrypting your files, the files that you have access to anyway. So that makes it very difficult to detect, and it can do some really nasty things. Now, ultimately, it's called ransomware because they charge a ransom. They want you to send some money over, and if you do, they will graciously share with you the private key necessary to decrypt your data and gain access to your own files.
Aren't they sweet?
They really are very nice about it.
Trying to hook you up.
Yeah, and that's the real big thing here is that effectively you're having to pay a criminal and then count on that criminal to then decrypt your stuff. So yeah, it's
fingers crossed, everyone. Right?
It reminds me of the you park your car in a parking lot and the shady guy walks up and says, "Man, it'd be a shame if something happened to your car while you were in the restaurant. I could watch it for you if you'd like." And the message is clear there. If you don't pay them,
good tip, yeah,
you're gonna regret it. So that's basically what ransomware boils down to. So the big question that's on most people's minds is, well, can we stop it? And there's a few different answers to this, but the answer I like the most is it's not likely. It's not likely that you're going to be able to stop this one, and that's because ransomware. It's the old adage that if you are an attacker, if you're a red teamer, you just have to find one flaw in the system, one exploit, and you can get in and be victorious. But as a blue teamer, as a defender, what do you have to do?
Get your work cut out for you.
You've got to stop every vulnerability and exploit, every way to get into your network, and that's just not realistic. So really, really challenging. And I'll give you an example. There's a lot of stuff out there like antivirus that comes with ransomware protection and various things. You can try and rely on that. But I did a quick little test. And Daniel, have you ever heard of the site VirusZoo?
Yeah, isn't it where they curate like a bunch of viruses that have been throughout history? Kind of thing?
Yeah. And I shouldn't call it a site. It's a GitHub repository.
Oh,
so you go on GitHub and there's this repo, and instead of being regular source code, it's packed full of viruses and malware.
Well, fun.
Which, if you're a security researcher, is a great place to get some test material. They have the source code for a lot of it there. And so I grabbed several of the ransomware packages that they had, and you can repeat this exercise at home if you want. And I took them and threw them against VirusTotal. VirusTotal is Google's antivirus platform where you can either throw an actual file or the hash of a file in, and they run it against a ton of different engines. And so I took the most recent ransomware that they had listed on the site, and I threw it into VirusTotal, and I got a pretty interesting result. So this one was called the ransomware unnamed 0.
It's looking good there, Don.
1 out of 71 engines got it. Now, several engines didn't offer the ability to scan it. So like Sophos didn't scan it. I tried it on my own laptop where I run Sophos antivirus, and it did catch it. But what you see is a lot of engines showed it as clean. And it goes back to what I mentioned earlier that, hey, this stuff runs in user space. It's not like it's modifying system files. It's not a rootkit that's getting in under the hood.
It's not doing anything that is really be flagged like users encrypt files from time to time, so it's not something it might catch
Yeah.
as a weird activity, right?
You know, a lot of the antivirus products out there that have ransomware protection, all they're doing is watching for services that generate a lot of disk I/O. And when they see that, they freeze that process and they ask you, is this the right thing? So really the ransomware is already encrypting stuff by the time that software catches it. And then it's relying on other things like Windows file history or Mac OS's Time Machine or whatever to be able to recover the files that were encrypted. It's not a sophisticated way to stop an attack.
It's better than nothing, I guess, right? If you can at least put the kibosh on it before it gets everything.
Take what you can get.
Yeah.
All right, so you know that's a big deal there. Now I will tell you that if our antivirus can't protect us, or can't protect us 100% of the time, then we're going to have to come up with some other kind of alternative. And there's several different people out there that are pushing different ideas. There's one well-known security researcher, Bruce Schneier, who keeps saying that we need
something.
But keeps saying that the government can save us, right? We need government regulation to get out there and secure IoT devices is the big area where he's pushing. And a lot of these non-secure devices are how these viruses are proliferating. A hard word to say.
It is.
But I will tell you that if you're waiting on the government to solve this problem for you, you're probably going to be disappointed. And let me just give you an example of a news story that broke a few weeks ago. The FBI releases master decryption keys for the Gand Crab ransomware.
Well, look at that. Tax dollars hard at work. Right?
Awesome. Yeah. If you get hit today by the Gand Crab ransomware, don't pay it. Don't pay the ransom. You can go, and the FBI, working with, I think it was Cybereason or a few other researchers, actually created a little software tool you can run, and it will go and decrypt your files. And there you go. You've now survived the Gand Crab ransomware attack.
Bullet dodge. We're ready to go. Thanks, Don, for letting us know about the
Good
Gand
times.
Crab.
Just wait for the government. But what's not here, so this is the Bleeping Computer article. If you go and actually pull up the information on the Gand Crab ransomware, it is very prevalent right now in 2019, spreading all over. And this article came from HackerNoon.com. And if you look, it shows the first infection instances were documented in January of 2018.
So if I got hit with Gand Crab in January of 2018, I am now in the middle of 2019. I've been waiting for a while.
Months. 18 months. That's a long time, right? So if your files get encrypted, you're probably thinking, how can I get my data back? And you're thinking today, right? Maybe tomorrow, maybe on Monday, but soon, not 18 months. Yeah, you're not just going to sit there with an encrypted machine twiddling your thumbs. There have been a few instances where the keys have been recovered in as short as 1 or 2 months. I've never heard of one that's been shorter than even a few weeks. It usually, these encryption keys are hard to guess. If they were easy to guess, we'd have a whole new set of problems.
It wouldn't be an issue, right? And, it could be possible that I got hit with Gand Crab today, and now I'm able to decrypt my stuff and all is not lost. But if you've been waiting around for that 18 months up to that certain spot, that's just not a feasible plan in my estimation, Don.
Yeah, that's the big challenge. So don't count on someone else solving the problem for you. You've got to solve it yourself. So the question that I get asked after this, can the government save us? No. All right, well, then great. What do we do?
You've kind of painted us into a dark hole here, Don. We're not feeling really good about the whole ransomware situation.
It's all sunshine and rainbows.
Tell me there's at least something that we can do.
All right, so what do we do? And what I tell people is you need to be thinking about 2 things, all right? First, try to prevent it. Give it the old college try. See what you can do. Maybe you can stop it, all right? But plan to get hit. Just assume that, what happens when you assume, but in this case, just plan for it. Just say, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to stop this. So what do I do if I actually get hit by ransomware? Have I put the proper steps in place to make sure that we can recover from that? And that's an important piece of this whole process to make sure that we're able to recover. And so by the time these things make it to the news, like when Baltimore got hit, right? They got hit. The ransom on that, I believe, was $500,000. They said, we're not going to pay it. And then they proceeded to go weeks with systems that were offline and an estimate of over $18 million in cost in recovering. Oosh. And the problem was they didn't have a good way to recover. And we've seen that with some local organizations. There was the government in Lake City, a city about 45 minutes north of here. They got hit and their backups got encrypted as well. So they couldn't recover their backups. If you're not prepared, if you don't have a way to recover, then you're going to be tempted to pay that ransom. To just say, look, all right, I'll pay it $500,000, but I get my data back. And you go that route. You want to avoid that if at all possible.
Yeah, that's never a good time. I'm sure there's some tech workers there that are feeling the hurt on that one.
All right, so let's divide this up. I said we want to try and prevent it, but at the same time, plan to get hit. So let's focus on the try and prevent. What can we do to try and prevent getting hit? Well,
turn your computers off and never use them again.
You certainly could. Okay. That was the old, you don't have to worry about power surges if all your devices are unplugged.
That's true.
But then it's hard to use the devices. Same thing with ransomware. We want to be able to use our computers, but we want to prevent getting ransomware. So there's a handful of things we can do, and I normally refer to this as 5 steps, but I kind of shortened it to 4 here. The first one is software updates, right? Software updates are a big part of what's going on, and let me just show you an example here with a ransomware that's going around the I'm going to screw this one up because I don't actually know how to say it.
Such a fun name.
Sadanakibi.
Sadanakibi?
I have no idea.
It's the emphasis on the syllable that's important there.
Perfect. Yes. So this ransomware is so devious you can't even pronounce its name, but it exploits a critical Oracle WebLogic flaw. Now, Oracle WebLogic is a very expensive piece of software. In fact, if it just said Oracle and then they made up a name, you would know it was expensive. Any Oracle product,
yeah,
they are really pricey. But I highlighted the very first sentence in this article: a recently patched critical flaw in Oracle WebLogic is being actively exploited. So this was a flaw that was found by the developers or by a researcher or somebody. It was patched before the ransomware hit the wild, right? Now, what a lot of ransomware authors do is they're taking ransomware you can get it, again, from like the Virus Zoo or wherever, and all they have to do is learn about a good exploit that they can use or a vulnerability that they can exploit to then deploy this out. And in order to find that, they can just watch the patch notes, the release notes for various software packages, and they'll see, oh, Cisco just patched this in their firmware. That means people who haven't patched are still vulnerable. I can use that to push my ransomware out. And that's just an easy way for them to get in.
Now, we saw this with Eternal Blue, right? They had a known vulnerability in their software. Someone just slapped some ransomware on top of it and said, have fun.
Yeah, and that one had been patched,
yep.
And it's still being exploited today. Yeah. And it's been almost 2 years.
Yeah, it was in 2017.
Yeah, so that's what happens. Now, if you have been doing your updates, that would not be a problem. Now, in the past, we followed a different update cycle. We would say like, oh, an update came out, we're going to test it. Maybe we'll do 2 weeks in an alpha group, and then another 2 weeks in a little more widespread beta group before we finally roll out to all of our production environment. We can't do that anymore, not with security updates. Security updates need to be rolled out much more quickly. And people are starting to become nervous about security updates because the vendors are releasing fewer and fewer details, right? It's not uncommon to see Microsoft or Cisco or somebody release an update package, and it will just say 7 security issues addressed. And that's it.
And that's it, yeah.
And that's because they don't want to give the attackers any more details than necessary, and so they just put the bare minimum in there. Now, unfortunately, most of the security researchers that discover this stuff will just turn around and do the public disclosure. I shouldn't say unfortunately, but I mean, it just gives the attackers
pros and cons to everything. Right?
And I mean, I'd rather they disclosed it than we just didn't know about it,
right.
You know, because the attackers can sometimes find this stuff on their own.
0 days are a real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be a 0 day now. I mean, it can be a 14 day and they'll usually still beat people out.
my 2 week attack.
Responsible disclosure is what, 90 days, right?
Yeah.
So a security researcher notifies a company, they can take up to 3 months to actually put a fix in. Well, the researcher found it, an attacker could find it.
Right.
And most companies will take that full 90 days to push a patch out. So that's the kind of thing that we're up against. There are other things that we can try and do. In my opinion, one of the most effective ways to prevent ransomware is user education. If we teach our users how to identify phishing emails, not opening attachments, not downloading or running software, keeping an eye out for activities that tend to lead to us downloading the software, that can really make a difference. Most ransomware doesn't need admin privileges. So a user can just be a regular user on a computer, and if they get tricked into running a program one way or another, then it can all of a sudden start encrypting data, or some of them will just set up a scheduled job to run later. But again, under that user's privileges, they don't care about the operating system. They're trying to encrypt the user data, and that's going to cause our big issue there. So user education, really, really important.
Kind of a big deal. I know, it's like we're doing everything we can as technical people, right? The systems administrators, the network administrators, the security people in your companies to create as a secure environment as possible. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together, and we are only as strong as our weakest link. So that is definitely one of the biggest things you can do is teach your people what not to do.
And end user security training is a lot different than security professional training. So we've put this stuff together where we turned it into like a 1 hour storytelling time.
It was fun.
So, we got the company together in a couple of different groups, and we talked to them and told them stories like, here's a story about a user who, received an email and it looked legit. They clicked on it and here's what happened. Yeah. When you tell people what's the possible result of their actions, they really learn, as opposed to, here's a policy. I want you to read this and conform. Yeah. It's hard to communicate that over. All right, other things we can do. I know I said that most antivirus doesn't work perfectly, right?
True.
But it does work. It works in a lot of cases. And so our third kind of thing that we can look at is antivirus and anti-malware software. Now, antivirus software has evolved a lot over the years. Back 20 years ago when heuristic antivirus scanners were becoming popular, it was really cool. They could identify all these new malicious things. That doesn't really work so well anymore, so they try. But a lot of antivirus and anti-malware software has now been extended to include something called EDR. And I want to show you guys an example
of
EDR.
Music at the dance clubs, right?
That's ELO, right?
EDM.
Oh, I'm
electronic dance music.
I'm not hip. Oh, ELO is a band anyway, right? All right, what do I know?
Orchestra.
All right, well, before we devolve into club music.
That's funny.
EDR is endpoint detection and response.
Yeah.
Okay. And it operates under that idea of you might not be able to prevent this, right? But you can stop it from spreading, right? If you're running, and the example here I'm using is Sophos Intercept X, which is just one that I've used before and that I'm comfortable with, but there's a number of vendors out there that have the same type of solutions. Don't feel like this is the only option. I'm not paid by Sophos. But what it does is it watches machines. And if it sees a machine get hit by ransomware, it might not have been able to stop it. It might not have seen it coming. But now it knows. It sees that activity. It sees the files getting encrypted. It knows it's happening. And as soon as it does that, it's able to identify what happened and then take all of your other computers and stop it. If it finds the ransomware sitting on the hard drive already, it can delete it, quarantine it, get it out of there. If the ransomware tries to run, it said, no, you got me once. Yeah. You're not going to get me a second time. Right? It was a fool me once, shame on
you.
Yeah.
Fool me twice, shame on me. But it's basically kind of trying to stop that cyber kill chain at the root instead of letting it propagate. Once it realizes this is a threat, we're just going to put the stops on this thing and forget it.
Right. And the other big advantage of EDR is it gives you a paper trail. It will show you, here's the first machine that got infected.
That's nice.
Here's the file that carried the infection. Here's where it came from. It was downloaded from a website. All of that's being tracked. So if you're leveraging an antivirus package already, call that vendor up on the phone and say, hey, do you have an EDR option or is this built in? Let's see if we can take advantage of that. And a lot of them are charging extra for it, but in my opinion, it's worth it. And it is another great way to try and prevent and at a minimum, stop it from spreading. So those are all some different things. One more thing I want to mention, this gets us a little bit outside of the realm of antivirus, but is usually offered by the same companies, application whitelisting, right? Ransomware is an application. It's a program that you run. And most operating systems have some way to let you define a list of approved applications that are allowed to run on your system. And when you do that, then if ransomware tries to run, it's just not allowed. Now, this technology has been around a long time. Like in Windows, it's built into the operating system. It's called AppLocker. In Mac OS, you can use Profile Manager to create whitelists. You can restrict just down to App Store apps. There's all sorts of different ways to go about doing whitelisting. But if it's been around so long, Daniel, do you know the secret, like why people aren't doing it?
I have no idea why they're not doing it. It doesn't make any sense not to.
Because it's a pain in the butt. That's the technical term for that one.
Because it's hard.
Right. So if you think about how whitelisting works, right? If you have your operating system, you just tell it, hey, take a baseline. Everything that's on here right now is allowed to run. Right. Okay, so that's easy. That takes 2 minutes. You're done. You roll it out across your organization. You're in business. Then an application update comes out. When the update comes out, usually the binary gets replaced, which means it has a different signature. So anytime software gets updated, you've got to update your
So
application
it's a
whitelist.
constant maintenance.
And I just got done telling you a few moments ago that you got to push updates out fast. Now you got to update your whitelist too. It is constant maintenance. It's tough, right? And if you're using App Locker on your Windows machines and Profile Manager on your Macs, and maybe you got some Linux boxes in there, and so you're juggling all these different OSs, it becomes a nightmare. And so there are solutions out there. One of the most popular ones is from a company called Carbon Black. They have Carbon Black Protect, and it helps you manage an application whitelist. Cylance works kind of the same way. That's a pretty popular name. Cylance just got acquired, didn't they?
Did they?
No, they got acquired by Semantic, I thought.
Did they really?
And Carbon Black just got acquired too by
I
VMware.
saw that. Yeah, that was a huge deal.
These solutions, I mean, companies are recognizing the value of them, and so the companies are getting acquired. And again, I'm not paid by Carbon Black. In fact, I don't use them.
Paid by Carbon Black. Now they got all that money.
That's a good point.
It was like $4 billion.
It was a lot. So look around, look at the options for your environment. Application whitelisting is a great way to stop it. Even, and not just ransomware, any type of virus and malware, they're all executables. And so you can catch it and stop them from executing because of that whitelist. So another great resource to be able to check.
All right, Don. Well, you've had a two-pronged attack or preparedness. Talked about how we can try to stop things, but eventually we have to prepare for the worst, right?
Right. So what if you've done all this stuff, like you bought all the software, you paid all the bills, you got it rolled out, you got a state-of-the-art system, and you get hit anyway? Well, don't feel bad, right? You're not alone. This happens to a lot of organizations. You can get hit, and usually your end users are your worst enemy.
Yeah.
They find some way to circumvent the protections you put in, so that they can run WhatsApp or whatever craziness they got.
Have it, right? Must have.
I can't even keep up with
That's
this
line
stuff.
of business, baby. You got
It's
that's how you keep productivity high.
Yeah.
WhatsApp.
Yeah, and then now applications can be embedded inside of web pages. Now it gets even trickier because it's nested inside of the web browser's executable. It's all very, very confusing.
One, cry in the bathroom.
So if you do get hit, you need to make sure that you're able to recover. All right. And so there's a few things that you should be doing already. So if you aren't doing these things, you need to start. That can be done, typically with not a lot of cost or with no cost at all. And one of the first ones is to get in and do a business impact analysis, a BIA. All right. And I'm showing you an example from ready.gov, that's a U.S. government website. If you watch the disaster recovery webinars that we did, I pointed this one out there too. It's just simple information on how you can create a list of what systems in your environment are the most important. If you get hit by ransomware and all of your machines go down, what do you need to get back online to service your customers, your users, your constituents? You need to know. All right. The critical stuff, you need to be able to recover quickly, very, very quick. If you're a hospital, right, anything that's responsible for issuing out medications and things, you need that up quick. If it's just your web browsing machine, then who cares? It can take a week. It's not a big deal. But you need to focus your resources in the right area, and a business impact analysis is how you start with that. So basically just identify what systems are really important in your network. And once you've got that figured out, then you transition into how can I actually recover them. Now, when it comes to recovery time, you want to get things back in place as fast as possible. And I know, like with my personal machine, I actually don't back up my personal machine. And I'll tell you why. All of my files, all of my resources are in cloud storage. They're in Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever platform it is that I choose to use.
I just thought you were an adrenaline junkie. Like to live life on the edge.
Could do that, like running Suicide Linux, one typo and it formats itself.
That's great.
So, I know my stuff is in the cloud.
Right.
So if something happens to my laptop, I just format it, reinstall whatever operating system I'm running that month, because I change that pretty rapidly, and then I connect back to my cloud drive and I'm in business. Right? Now that works for me individually. But imagine you have 1,000 computers. That doesn't work for 1,000.
That's a big old Dropbox.
Daniel, if I asked you right now to take my laptop and install Windows on it, get the driver set up and do some updates.
Oh yeah, that takes a bit of time, especially with those updates. It could take forever depending on what version of Windows we have laying around, how far away it is from the current version, as far as updates go anyway. That could take a few hours.
And that's just the OS.
That's just the OS.
What about line of business applications?
Now you're talking even more work, especially depending on how many line of business applications we actually have.
Right.
A full day's worth of work at this
So even if we have our data files backed up somewhere, just getting our systems back operational can take a while. And the more systems we have to maintain, the longer that's going to take. So I recommend at a minimum, at least just for your mission critical systems, you should be doing an image-based backup. Image-based backup, if your machine gets messed up, you just redeploy the image to it. The image already has everything set up. It's already got your line of business applications, the configurations, all that data can be done that way. Now, image-based backups have been around a long time ago. Daniel, what do you think was the earliest program you worked with?
Oh man, probably Norton Ghost.
Oh yeah,
back
Norton
in
Ghost.
the day, in the late '90s.
So you could boot off a floppy disk or whatever and take
Yep.
an image of your system.
That was it.
Those were manual, right? And you had to
Yes.
take your system offline. Those technologies have advanced a ton. So you have services out there like Acronis. So they have Acronis True Image, which can do online backup. Your machines can be online, and it can take an image of them and store them. And that way, you can take an image every night. You can do differentials or what's the other one? Incrementals. There we go. Thank you, Daniel. And so you get nice short backups, but it is a full image base. So if you get hit with ransomware, you just go and click a few buttons. If you've got Wake on LAN and all that stuff set up right, you can just reboot the machine, and all of a sudden, it's restored. And you can do it on 1,000 machines all at once. Really, really worth it. And Acronis does this. Paragon Software, they have some solutions that do this. There's a number of vendors out there that make this. A lot of the operating system vendors have it. So like Microsoft has Windows Deployment Services, or WDS. System Center Configuration Manager can do it to an extent. It's not really designed for backups. They have SCDPM, which I'm not a fan of. System Center Data Protection Manager. ArcServe. There's a lot of. There's ArcServe Solutions, Semantic Backup Exec. A ton of them support doing image-based backups. And I'll tell you, if your whole system gets hit by ransomware, you can be back online within a couple of hours. And you just go to each machine, boot them up, tell it to restore, and they're deploying within 2 hours. They're back online. Now, if you haven't fixed the vulnerability that was used for that ransomware to spread, it's probably going to spread again. So you do need to fix that, but at least you're able to quickly recover and get back online. And that's exactly what they weren't able to do in most of the scenarios you hear about on the news, because if they recovered that fast, you probably never would have heard about it. That's
that's true.
Disclosure rules are really weird about ransomware. Normally, if you think that your customer's data has been compromised, you have to disclose that. With ransomware, it's not necessarily sending your data anywhere, right? Your machine gets encrypted and the key is stored on a separate server somewhere, but your data never went anywhere.
Right. It hasn't been like posted in Pastebin or anything, or
so
on
there's
GitHub repository. There's
a debate right now. Like if you get hit by ransomware, do you need to disclose that to your customer? And I say that you should, because you actually...
a security breach is what we're disclosing, I would say.
Yeah, and also you don't really know what happened to your data in the background, right? It could be uploading it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? But what you see on the news, those companies half the time probably wouldn't disclose if they were able to recover quickly. So definitely something to think about. Now, another option that we can kind of tack onto this is doing versioning or cloud-based storage, right? I mentioned OneDrive, Dropbox, Google Drive, you got Amazon S3, Backblaze, all these different places that you can back up to online. Those give you offline storage, and offline storage is a secret magic thing.
It is voodoo, isn't it?
Well, that makes you not immune to ransomware, but always able to recover from it. So one example I give is a while back there was that KeyRanger ransomware that was released for Mac. And a lot of Mac users say, well, I'm on a Mac, I can't get a virus, but you can. And especially these that just run in user space anyway. The KeyRanger variants, there were 2 variants out there, and the second variant was Aware of Time Machine. And if you've ever used Mac OS, they have that Time Machine backup where you stick a hard drive on there, and it does a backup every hour.
It's great software.
Pretty awesome.
Plus the view that they give you to be able to go back to different versions. So nice.
Very user friendly.
Yeah.
And it's great backup software, right? But it's all dependent on having that drive attached, right? Well, if the drive is attached, you can navigate the file structure of it. And if you get ransomware, it'll encrypt your files and your backups. And
that's horrible, Don.
Now Time Machine doesn't help. Microsoft Windows has file history, which is their equivalent of Time Machine. Same thing. It's expecting an online drive. Now, you can set up more than one drive in both systems and tell your end user, hey, every other day, swap the drives. All right. Do you think your end user is going to do that? Because they're not.
You can't get them to use a correct password, let alone...
You'll be lucky if they have
drives out.
You'll be lucky if you have one drive plugged in a week later. And so we can't push this on our end users, right? It's just they've got other things to worry about. They've got a job they're trying to perform. So we need something else. If you're using cloud-based storage, when you do that, the majority of them support versioning, right? And with file versioning, you can roll back changes. And this is a concept that developers know all too well. Services like GitHub maintain a list of every change that's ever been made to a file so they can roll them back in case something goes wrong. Well, guess what? Ransomware is something going wrong. We want to roll it back. So if you're using Google Drive, for example, your local files might get encrypted. And guess what? The encrypted copies will get replicated up to Google Drive. But then you just go into Google Drive and say, show me the previous versions, and you roll it back. In fact, Microsoft has a tool. Hang on, let me see if I can show this one to you here, which is if you use Office 365, you can go into your OneDrive, and if you go into settings, there's an option right there. It says restore your OneDrive. And you see a calendar. You can actually see the amount of files. Like for me, if you look back on the 29th, there are a bunch of files that changed there. So you can roll back to that date, and it gives you your unencrypted files back. Now, if you still have the ransomware, it's just going to encrypt them again, but you can roll back again.
Right.
So the idea is you fix your problem and then roll back your drive. Everything gets put back. You're not one of those people that just lost their data. You don't even really have to recover it. You just click a button.
I like that. Having that versioning has always been great. Back when Microsoft did the volume shadow copy, and now it's the file versioning, I think.
Yep.
Just such a phenomenal thing. I can't tell you how many times it has saved my bacon, not from ransomware, but just for my own self going, oh no, I've deleted something. Let me fix that real quick.
Yep.
So this is a great application that can get you out of the weeds when it comes to ransomware.
Now, with all the things that we just mentioned, remember to test and monitor these, right?
Oh.
If you have a great backup solution in place, but the backup's been failing for 5 weeks and nobody noticed, it's not going to do you any good. If you're backing up to the cloud and you, like Dropbox had this for a while where the versioning wasn't turned on by default, right? So
That was smart.
You can't go after the fact and say, oh, I want to turn that on, right?
Yeah.
So you need to double check it, do some test restores, do a test rollback and see, make sure it's working for you. And just make sure you're not dependent on that individual machine or whatever. Definitely test. Definitely monitor. Keep an eye on whether those systems are working. Really, really super mega important.
And that's cyclical. That's something we always continually do, right?
All right, now let's just say for a moment, let's be super depressing because that's what I'm doing today.
Okay, Don, hit me.
All right, you've done everything that I just said, right? But the ransomware hits anyway. Or you know what? Maybe you didn't do everything that I said. Not because you're a bad person, but because you went to your CEO and said, hey, I need an extra $10,000 in the budget to add the EDR option to my antivirus. Or I need an extra X amount of dollars to set up some kind of cloud version control or my own repository servers to be able to manage updates or whatever. And they say, no, sorry, it's just not in the budget. So you know you need to do it, but you don't have the money. All right, well, then you don't do it. I mean, you steal service, I guess, but that's not a great idea either.
A whole new ball game right there.
That's a great way to get ransomware.
Called prison.
so either way, if you were in a situation like that, you may well get hit by ransomware.
Yeah.
Right. So what is the last ditch thing that we can do? Well, a budding new industry called cyber liability insurance. Many insurance organizations these days are offering cyber insurance, and you can get that. Typically, you can have it added onto your company's policies that you've already got open. Your company, I'm going to say, definitely has liability insurance. If not, your company's waiting to go out of business. But liability insurance is required in most states for companies, so you likely have that. They probably have unemployment insurance and other things. And I'm going to sound like a bad Geico commercial here, but you can save a ton of money if you bundle your insurance.
Does Geico offer cyber insurance?
I'm sure they do. Like they all do.
I
now.
am going online after this and checking that out.
Well, that slide I was just showing. Let me bring that back up. This is Nationwide, and most people know Nationwide for auto insurance. They are on your side, according to commercials. I don't think I've ever been insured by Nationwide.
I haven't.
Yeah. All right. Well, either way, Daniel and I both used to work for insurance companies. We should get a commission for something like this.
Right? Where's my money?
We got to plan our economics better.
Yeah, I know.
But either way, that cyber insurance is super important. Now, be careful. I'm showing you the Nationwide page here. They have 3 different products. So there's data compromise protection. That's if a hacker gets in and gets your customers' data or your private data. Like if they break into the Coca-Cola network and get the secret formula for Coke, that's data compromise, right? Then, if it was customer data, like first name, last name, email address, credit card number, then they go on to do identity recovery protection. If your ID is stolen, they help you to recover from that. But the one that they have for cybersecurity is CyberOne protection. If you look at what it does, restoring and recreating data. In other words, your data got encrypted. How do you restore it or recreate it if you can't restore it? Restoring a computer system to its pre-attack level. So again, like an image-based restore or whatever that takes. Lost business and extra expenses, that's just straight up cash. Public relations services. You got to talk to your customer. You got to talk to the press. You got to fess up. That's, especially if you are under GDPR, you're legally required to. But you should do it anyway. I mean, that's what good people do.
That's right. Don't hurt your reputation. Just come out and say, hey, things happened. We're sorry.
But there's different ways to say it, right? And especially when it comes to email, tone, inflection, a lot of that stuff gets lost, and you can sound like a jerk even when you didn't mean to.
Yeah.
Public relations really helps. So cyber insurance, it's a easy thing to add on to a policy, or you can go out and find any number of companies that provide it. Again, I just use Nationwide here because their webpage is easiest to read, but there's plenty of different organizations that offer that type of insurance.
Don, I love your decision making.
Yeah, that page is easy to read.
That process is just amazing to me. But you gave us a great plan, right? It's a wonderful thing. And like all great plans, they're probably causing more questions than answers. And normally this is where we would take your questions live and go through a few of them and answer them for you. But because of our little technical problem, we're just going to let you go to our Twitter page at ITProTV and use the hashtag ProsKnow. Ask your questions there. And as soon as we're done here, we'll jump in there and start answering questions through social media. So that's our plan today
and
on that.
Because you're getting this recorded instead of live, feel free to throw questions out there anytime. Our social media team watches that, and they'll come to us. We'll answer any questions you have. I'm sure there's plenty. Just make sure you use that hashtag ProsKnow. Is the hashtag assigned to our webinar series, because that's what they're watching out for. So hashtag ProsKnow. A good IT pro is always knowing.
Always learning.
I know, always knowing, yeah. So,
always knowing.
So if you use that, we'll see it. We'll get your questions answered one way or another.
But that's not the end of this webinar. We have a special gift for you. Thank you so much for joining us. We are giving you 30% off when you use the promo code webinar30. You got to check that out. It's going to be great. It's for IT training you'll want to watch here at IT Pro TV. It's all here, right? Every vendor you can think of, well, a lot of them anyway. I don't know. You could probably think of a few that I don't know of, but we've got all the big dogs, right? It's CompTIA, Cisco, Microsoft, Apple, and of course, like Linux and security. We cover all the bases. And again, going back to personal, you have free membership. You don't even need a credit card to sign up. You can just go right to itpro.tv, sign up, get that free membership, and you can look at the variety of plans that we have to offer for you. And there's your web link right there. Visit itpro.tv/personal to check that out. Now, if you're in a business, we can even do a demo for you, show you what we have to offer as far as teams go, and check out our pro portal for those team leaders. And you can even get a free trial for your IT team. Try before you buy kind of thing. We want to make sure that you are happy with our product. And once you see it, we're pretty sure you're going to enjoy what you've seen and sign up. But that is at itpro.tv/business. All right, Don. Well, great stuff as always. Any parting words for our viewers out there before we go?
I did forget to mention that if you're actually experiencing a ransomware attack, you should count on not having the internet available when it's time to do your recovery. Because if you have ransomware, it's going to be beaconing out, and a lot of ISPs will see that and they'll cut you off, and that makes it really challenging to recover if you have cloud storage.
Yeah. You might get to the internet. Where's that cloud backup?
You might have to call your ISP up, and they're usually pretty good people about it. They can give you connectivity where needed and so on, but something to be aware of. And then, Daniel, you mentioned some of the other webinars that are going on. Mm-hmm. We actually have another ransomware webinar coming up that is targeted to MSPs, managed service providers, that is not so much focused on the ransomware itself, but how MSPs have become a target for ransomware authors because they know if they can compromise an MSP network, they can then use the MSP software to push out the ransomware across an entire enterprise or even multiple customers, all with one click of a button.
The treachery.
And I mean, they whitelist it in the AV and then they push it out. It's really, it's like worst case scenario.
I'm going to watch that one.
Definitely check it out. If you work for an MSP or an MSSP, you'll definitely want to see it. But if you're just IT curious or whatever, you can jump in there. You'll learn a lot. So that one's coming up in a few weeks. Actually, I think it's anyhow, go to itpro.tv/webinar and you'll be able to see when it is, because I'm going to screw up the date.
Yeah. So there you go. All right, everyone. Well, we do appreciate you joining us, but Don, let's call it quits. Thanks for watching, everyone. Signing off for IT Pro TV. I've been your host, Daniel Lowry.
And I've been Don Pizzette.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. You will receive a link to a recording of the webinar delivered to your inbox. All the questions we didn't get to will be answered via Twitter at #ProsKnow. Remember that coupon code is webinar30. See you back here for the next IT Pro TV webinar.